Hi, hello everybody, welcome. So this is our sort of first official announcement of the Humans and Wildlife show that is going to be co-hosted with myself, Georgia Auteri. I'm a PhD candidate at University of Michigan, and then my co-host, Christian, if you'd like to introduce yourself
Yes,
briefly.
of course. Hi, Georgie, and hi, everyone. So you may know me. I'm actually a physicist and electrical engineer. I live in Vancouver and also partly in Kelowna here in the Okanagan, Canada. And I really look forward to this series because it's really exciting.
Yeah, so we have one of the, I guess like people, whenever they hear like I'm a wildlife biologist and they always want to know about different ways that different stories about like how they've encountered wildlife, or they want to know things about how we can help wildlife. And so this show is kind of meant to be an amalgamation of me and Christian's knowledge about that we've both gained in our careers. And also we're going to be having a lot of guests on the show because it's such a big topic, like how people are influencing wildlife and how wildlife are also affect people. So we're going to be bringing in a lot of different experts. And hi, David, and hello, Betty O'Brien and Frankman and Mohammed. It's great to see all of you here. So yeah, what do you say, Christian? Should we go into some of the topics?
Yeah, let's get right into it. So Georgia was so nice and listed a lot of topics. I've added some, and I think it's quite exciting. It's a huge topic, actually. If you think about humans and wildlife, it's what our whole life is about. You know, whether you go out into the countryside or you go into the city, we encounter this all the time, and maybe we're not even conscious about it. So, Georgia, why don't you start? Georgia, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, so the first thing that people often think of when they think of, our impact on not just wildlife, but the environment is climate change or global warming. And this is such a big topic, and it's often tied into some of the topics we have later on in the list. But climate change is creating a world where there's not good habitat for some species. It's too hot, or the climate cycles have shifted, and so there's species extinction happening from climate change, and then we also have some species responding well to it. Right, their ranges are expanding as it gets warmer farther northward, and that's not necessarily a good thing for the other species. So we have basically instances of invasive species because of climate change. And obviously, Christian, you've been seeing recently some of the effects of climate change on wildlife. Why don't you want to share that with us?
Yeah, let me just put up the one picture here. One second. Where was it? Let me just. Maybe, Georgia, can you just put it up?
Oh,
This one. I think I got it. One second.
there we go.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Now I double clicked it. I'm sorry. We'll get this right.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So this is a really important topic that goes right to my heart. So here, so as you know, especially in North America, we have a lot of ospreys everywhere. So actually that is a good sign. The way the osprey has become part of the urbanization of of wildlife and has actually adapted very well to human beings. They've changed the way they are, and so on. At the same time, the temperature is very critical because the ospreys, they typically have a body temperature of 41 degrees Celsius, which corresponds to about 111 Fahrenheit, and that's quite a bit higher than the human being has because they need a higher metabolic rate in order to survive. So actually, they do very well in warmer climates, except when the body temperature exceeds. When the ambient temperature exceeds the body temperature, and this is exactly what happened recently in Canada for the first time. At this time, it was a complete record. It came as a shock, and I actually live right in the middle of this. This is where our small summer house is, and I witnessed this change. And I was broadcasting live. Actually, I put my camera equipment in a position where we could monitor the nest, and I was there about 10 days ago, and I was showing there were 3 beautiful chicks, and we were all excited. Then this temperature rise came. The temperature rose above their body temperature, and that makes it impossible for them actually to regulate their temperature. So what the larger ospreys would do is they would go into dive into the water because they can cool themselves by evaporation, which works very well. However, the younger ones can only do it with their tongue. It's typically what you see with dogs and so on. They would hang out their tongues, and they have ability of respiring really fast in order to have a very good heat exchanger, because actually the surface area of a raptor has the tongue is very small. But that will not work anymore if there's a lack of liquid. And since they only can draw the liquid from food and nothing else, they overheat. And the situation has been absolutely devastating. I just talked to my friend David Hancock an hour ago. He's an eagle biologist in Vancouver, and he told me that that at the wildlife rescue centers, for example, OWL, which we have in Delta, is completely overfilled at the moment. They have over 43 eagles. They have never, ever had this in their lives before. So they will very much rely on donations, on food, and so on. And these are the things that Georgia and I want to address. Where does this come from? Is there a possibility to mitigate these type of problems and so on?
Yeah, and so one of the topics of the show definitely is, what is our responsibility as humans? It's not necessarily, something we'll touch on every episode, but definitely there's these questions of what does conservation even mean? And maybe we can get into that in a little bit in a minute, because, how you go about protecting something is not a straightforward answer. Even after you've decided that, we should protect this area or these species, it's very complicated to go about doing that. You have to navigate, the different sort of different barriers, different social, political drives in the area, but also, you have limited money, so limited conservation resources. So how do you decide and prioritize what do we protect with these limited resources, and what's the most effective and efficient way to actually go about protecting it? And we had kind of what's the word when it's not the first episode, but sort of a pilot episode.
Yes.
That was on my channel last week, I believe, with Molly, who is an advocate for wildlife. This is just a screenshot for it. And Molly she is someone who works for the Humane Society of the United States, which is an organization that does a lot of advocacy for wildlife. And one of the things that she's been working on a lot recently is regulations and sort of political legislation to promote fair treatment of wild animals in terms of killing them, in terms of hunting practices. So, a lot of people hunt animals and they eat the meat or whatever, and they do it in an ethical way. But there's a lot of practices like trophy hunting or wildlife killing contests that are not as ethical, and that a lot of people would like to see more tightly regulated. So Molly talked a lot about that. If you're interested, definitely check it out on my channel. I think it was last week, and it's called, Interview with Molly Tamulovich. But Molly was a really great first guest to have on the show, and we're looking forward to having more great guests like her, and people that do that know the science of how are we as humans changing the world and how are we reacting to it, but also people that are working more on the advocacy side, maybe exclusively, more on, how do we find solutions to this, not necessarily scientific solutions, but also just sort of like political or social solutions. So. Yeah,
I think that's very good, Georgia. So why don't we go through some of the let's outline some of the topics, and we'll just say a few words to each of the topics.
Yeah. So we talked about quite a bit about climate change, and you had your example. Invasive species, I mentioned briefly. You'll sometimes hear the term exotic species used synonymously. This is basically species that, because of humans, are no longer in they're no longer where they're supposed to be. So they've either expanded their range because humans have accidentally brought them over to another continent for some reason, or humans are helping the species spread in some way that's problematic for the environment and for other species. And so this might include species that are expanding their range due to climate change. So I believe David Howden mentioned, yeah, mosquitoes expanding farther north thanks to climate change. You know, it's becoming a problem as some diseases associated with mosquitoes, for example, that didn't used to be found in these northern areas, like Zika was a big example of it when Zika started becoming transmitted to people in Florida in the United States. It's a disease transmitted by mosquitoes. People are like, wait, the species of mosquito that carries the Zika virus didn't used to come that far north. Well, now it does, thanks to climate change. But also, you know, people help move species around. Like, for example, barnacles on boats, species of barnacle that attach to boats, and people move their boat from lake to lake. And that's another example of a way that invasive species has helped, or that people have helped some species sort of move around in a way that's problematic. Maria says that she regularly supports the Humane Society of the United States. Thank you so much, Maria. And yeah, hopefully we'll be sharing more ways that people can help support wildlife through this show.
By the way, just to make it clear, we really want to involve the audience also. That is very important for us. So we really appreciate all your comments. We will do the best we can to address every single one of them. Probably the way we're going to structure is that in the beginning, we'll do the interview probably for 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll hand it over to the audience, and that'll be your big chance to throw in as many questions as you have.
Yeah, and definitely. And for this episode, I should say, where we don't have a guest besides each other, of course, for this episode, we're really interested in hearing you pitch additional topics that you want to see covered, whether it's just sort of a broad, undefined topic like, oh, climate change or plastics in the ocean. We want to hear your broad topics, or if it's something like a really specific case you've heard about that you would like to see covered, like put it in the comments, and definitely we will add it to our list and find our best through our connections to find someone to interview about it too.
Now that's an excellent idea. Okay, so that was invasive species. Next one, Georgia.
So, and the next one is wildlife and cities/towns.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So, you know, we all know some people or some species do better with people than others. So think of pigeons, rats in a city. These are species that are considered nuisance species by many. And I guess let's be real, they are nuisance species in a sense because they've caused big problems for a lot of people. But it's really, we really cause the problems, right, by leaving like lots of trash around and stuff like that. But you know, how wildlife are not just, you know, rats and pigeons, they have come to make their home in the cities quite comfortably, but there's other species that we're still seeing come in to cities, like they're learning with time, like coyotes. They're really getting the lay of the land for like, oh wait, humans aren't that scary, most of them at least, and we can kind of come into the urban areas and take advantage of them, or suburban areas too. So there's a lot of species that historically maybe only lived on forest edges or something. They were sort of specialized to that interface between a field and the forest, like robin, for example. But with suburban areas, we've created basically huge habitats like that, of where there's, you know, flat grassy areas combined with trees. So that used to be a pretty difficult type of habitat to find, but humans have created tons of it. And because of that, we have now like tons of robins. And so I always think that it's interesting to think about how, how we've kind of benefited a lot of species in some way, but these aren't the species that usually need protecting, right? The finches at your bird feeder or whatever. We've created a lot of great habitat for them, for better or for worse.
Yeah, those are all great points. Let me add some. First of all, of course, the bird society and the feeding of bird society is one of the biggest industries in the world. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, even the hummingbirds that we have, they never used to be in our latitudes. Now we suddenly have them, and we all put out feeders and we leave them out for winter, so they don't even migrate anymore. Another really funny story I quickly wanted to tell is I was doing an astronomy broadcast one night, and I was showing the moon. I was playing some Pink Floyd for people to enjoy, making it really sort of more like an astro party. And suddenly I looked there, and there was a whole raccoon family in front of me watching me, and I got such a fright. They were all sitting there, looking, what the hell is he doing? And these are the funny sort of urban encounters we have. And then, of course, when I was in Australia, it's also quite something. When I was out with my telescope at night there, I had to watch out for kangaroos. It can be quite frightening. They really look like huge overgrown rabbits when you're not used to them, and they really make a lot of noise. And you have so many encounters now with wildlife in all kinds of different countries. And as Georgia already said, the coyote is an excellent example. We have one right behind the house, and they become really smart. They become so adaptive in the way they go for our garbage and other things. So it's the whole symbiosis has changed completely.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank all the people that are adding stuff into the comments. Like Muhammad's talking about these like green parrots that have popped up in Cairo. I hadn't heard of that. So you are all giving us great ideas for stuff to look into for future episodes. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. And David Howden also has some comments on running the London Natural History Society, which does a lot of stuff on urban natural history. Oh yeah, as you'd expect, right? Yeah, London is a case where that is a city that's been there for a long time, at least by our standards in the United States. And I'm sure that, maybe how wildlife interact with urban areas in places where the cities have been there for a longer time, right? We might see different types of interactions there. The wildlife have had more time to get used to that city there and become acclimated to it. I guess the next, you guys are giving me good research ideas now, actually, for science. So thank you. Let's see, there's one comment. Can you speak about the birds dying? I'm not sure exactly what that means. Is it the ones with climate change that you filmed, Christian, do you think? Or
I'm not, because of course the word birds is very generic. Could you maybe be a little bit more specific on that?
Yeah, like which birds or what they're dying of would be helpful. Yeah. We have, so like our next topic, humans and predators. Oh, this is related. So yeah, maybe these are just kind of, general topics, but yeah, in some areas, predators are starting to move into urban areas. So this, we mentioned coyotes, they're not so much a predator, but cougars are starting to move into urban areas more so. And it's become kind of a big problem because one of the reasons cougars are moving in is, well, they're learning how to eat people's house pets. So to be clear, cougars are not like coyotes or raccoons in that they don't eat trash. They won't settle for trash. They are predators, and they are going to hunt and kill animals. So they're eating people's pets. They've learned not to be as afraid of dogs, but they're also eating the deer populations that have become established in suburban and urban areas. And that can get tricky because a lot of people like to have the deer around. They're happy that the deer have been there, but one of the strategies that's proposed for keeping cougars out is to, kill a bunch of deer in the area or something. That way there's not as much food, there's not as many prey species to attract the cougars. So with the questions of predators moving into urban areas is particularly sensitive. And then of course there's places in the world where people live sort of alongside predators and have lived alongside them for a long time. So we have places in Africa, like along the Nile, where people have lived with, I believe it's crocodiles or alligators. Crap. Well, they've lived along like big, scary water animals for a long time, and like, how do those people do that? Like, what is sort of the role of those animals in their society and things like that? And that used to be sort of the norm for a lot of people, living near scary cougars and bears and whatever and tigers, and it's become less so the case. So I think it's especially interesting to look at those few areas that are in the world where, well, I shouldn't say few areas, but like relatively less of the population of Earth now is living in areas like that where they seriously have to think about animals as a threat.
Yeah, and then of course we have, of course, the black bear, right?
Mhm.
At least in Canada, we have that quite often. Here in Vancouver, we read it quite often. Here around our house, we've had bears come in, and I'm sure you've seen such things too, and that's becoming quite common actually. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Christian, there's comments about like birds dying on back to the bird comment that was made about birds dying, but they don't know why. It sounds like some other people chimed in. I think the stories of disease transmission at bird
Yes.
feeders.
Yes. Okay. Well, we could. That's a great topic. Thank you so much. Good. Okay, then we come to wildlife and roads. That's a huge topic, of course. It's something that every one of us is always involved in some way or another. I mean, what I often encounter here, and I've learned this actually from an eagle biologist, David Hancock, how to deal with this is the main cause for a lot of raptors is of course roadkill, right? These are accidents that happen because there is something on the road that has been killed, and then the eagles come and they take that, and then they get killed, unfortunately, right? So here is the balance that we have to talk about. How can you remove that roadkill without endangering yourself and others, and at the same time saving wildlife? And we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, and I mean, wildlife and roads is a great example of a topic where it's, obviously good for animals to not get killed at roads, but it's also really good for people. If we can reduce people getting in accidents because they swerved to avoid hitting an animal, or people who are hit by a deer that's crossing the road. So it's a good example of like a solution where we have, or a problem where we have a lot of good motivation to try to find a solution. And there are a lot of optimistic stories with wildlife and roads. So there's people working on projects like tunnels under the road so that wildlife have a way to cross the road without going over it. And also sometimes they make wildlife crossing bridges that go over the road, and like the animals can kind of wander over. And Kristen, you've shared a photo. What is this photo
Yeah,
here?
let's enlarge that. How do we do this?
Here, I've got it.
Yeah, this is very interesting. And then I promise we'll get right back to the comments because I can see lots of good ideas coming in. Thank you so much. So this is interesting. This was from my trip to northern Japan in Hokkaido, and there's a very good example. There's a Dr. Saito, who's a very well renowned biologist there. And you have the problem in winter that the stellars, they come over from Kamchatka, so from eastern Russia. They fly over and they come to warmer areas in Japan, and it's a migration, and then they go back again. They stay there together with other eagles. And the problem there is that you have a lot of fast trains, high-speed trains in Japan, but then also you have a lot of problems with roadkill. So he has done extensive examination on there's also the Blakeston owl, which is the biggest owl in the world. It's an absolutely phenomenal, beautiful owl, and he has found out that certain birds react to different colors and patterns and so on. So they have put up, as you can see, some warning sticks for them to stay away from certain areas. He's put them on bridges and everywhere, and he set such a good example in Hokkaido that it's very likely that others will take up that example. And I think these type of studies should be much more publicized and become known in other areas. So I will try and get Dr. Saito also for an interview at some stage. Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. It sounds like a great topic. And yeah, a comment from Muhammad. Now crocodiles, thank you for that, are too vicious to even try to live with. You see one and run away. Yeah. So I actually heard of this through, I should plug, there's this book that inspired the humans and predators topic for me, which is called Monster of God, which is a book by David Quayman. And he kind of goes around and interviews and lives and, spends some time with I think 5 or 7 different groups of people who are sort of living near these like predators and stuff. And so that book is definitely one I'll be going back to kind of look for examples about humans living with predators. But I do remember a part in the book where, yeah, they I think it was interviewing some scientists studying the crocodiles too, and they did, I believe, cut one open to see what it had eaten, and it had a person inside. Yeah.
Very gruesome.
Yeah, yeah. And then there's a book I was pointed to that's called Tears of the Nile or something. It was a book of a coffee table book of this study, basically, with just a bunch of crocodile stomachs cut up to see what they had eaten.
That's
But
that's fascinating. Let's just take a look at some comments. I'm going to read some out.
okay.
So Rosemary writes, one topic I'd like to hear about is the problem with rodenticides, so pesticides. Yes. After watching a few eagles die in the nest hunter camps, I wonder if you think these poisons will ever be banned. This is a great topic, Rosemary. Actually, I did take that up about 1 to 2 years ago. And what I will do is I will try and get that expert back. It's a great topic, and it is there is so much misinformation about this. And of course, because you're absolutely right, people want to, as soon as they see rats or whatever, they put out rat poison without thinking of the consequences. And there are definitely alternatives. But we have to understand how wildlife functions. It's not that easy. So great topic. I'm going to add that. Next one. Okay, sorry, go on.
No, that's a really good. I remember once there's someone who I was doing research on their land. I was studying bats. And I think I was telling them, it's not a good idea to be putting these poisons into the environment. And he was like, oh, yeah, I know. He goes, he had actually been trying to poison the raccoons because he had so many raccoons around his house. And he said, but then one day he's like, I was watching one of the dead raccoons, like it was like lying on the beach near his house. And he's like, and I saw a snowy owl come down to start eating it. He's like, and I realized in that moment, he was watching the raccoon lying there dead that he had poisoned, and then he saw the owl come, and luckily he was smart enough in that moment, he made the connection, and he was like, wait, the owl's gonna get the poison, and he ran out and he scared the owl away. So yeah, this is a really important topic to cover, and I'm sure, Christian, that you have some expertise in it.
Well, at least I know someone. It's always good to know someone who's an expert.
Yeah. I always say being a scientist is all about knowing who to go ask.
That's exactly
the
right.
questions that you have. Yeah.
It doesn't change in your life. It goes on like that your whole life, I can promise you.
Yeah.
So, yes. Okay.
The next topic, wildlife and fire.
Big topic.
Yeah, again, a topic linked to climate change, but also to other activities. So like humans have been doing fire suppression for a long time, and in the United States, we have Smokey the Bear, who doesn't want you to start any fires or let them go out of control. And but unfortunately, some areas are meant to burn every so often. And so when you prevent fires for a long time, you have all this timber, dead plant matter and dead trees sort of building up in forests, and it's creating a scenario for just a blaze bigger than what the animals and the plants are adapted to deal with in that area. And you couple that with climate change, and you have extreme, crazy fires that are just way out of control.
Yes, I completely agree, Georgia. It's a great point. At the same time, the topic is incredibly complex. As you already mentioned in the beginning, these are not easy subjects. Let me give you an example. So some of the beliefs are, for example, that the forests are too dense. So what they do is they I don't know what the word is, de-dense. I'm just inventing that word, but they take something away because they say that would actually help wildfires if we do that. And Georgia mentioned exactly that we used to have natural wildfires, huge wildfires, if you look back in history. And that was quite natural. Now we've inhabited everything. So as we build more villages and houses, just like the one I'm in, and I'm looking at a lot of forest outside actually, and I noticed that there's a lot of deforestation that we believe is good. At the same time, this causes incredible high convective currents and winds that actually enhance wildfires. So again, the situation is not that simple. it's an incredible balance. And then, of course, there's the temperature, right? As Georgia already said, the temperature is not something that is just linear. As it gets hot, something gets drier. The whole chemical composition changes. And that can actually lead to incredibly strong wildfires and things burning that we never saw burning before.
Yeah. So, this is why, initially I just was thinking of doing a few episodes on this, but, as I started to write this list and Christian has, added a lot of stuff too, we realized each of these topics is so complicated. We're going to have multiple episodes on each one for sure and kind of rotate around with different experts. So yeah, one topic, the next topic, animals actually evolving in response to human pressures. So evolution, of course, I'm talking about, Darwin's evolution, survival of the fittest in this sense. We often think of that happening over a very long time frame, but humans have changed the environment so drastically that we actually do see some evolution now in response to human pressures. And that's a topic that some of my research touches on and that we'll definitely be talking about. And also we have evolution, I guess. I don't know, this is maybe too dangerous to combine this under one flag, but we have, sort of evolution in the non-Darwinian sense that's just adapting and changing. And we talked about that a little bit with like animals coming into cities and stuff. But I think it's amazing. We have genetic DNA evolution in response to things that people are doing now. And so, well, just to give a brief example, some of my research looks at the little brown bat and how it's evolved in response to an invasive species. This species is a type of fungus that was brought to North America by humans, and it grows on the bats when they're trying to hibernate in the caves. So they're in deep sleep, and then this weird fungus starts growing on them that didn't used to be in the caves. And they wake up to clean themselves off, and then they go back to sleep. Then they wake up again to clean off the fungus when it covers them again. And they basically end up, their hibernation, their winter sleep is so disrupted by this strange new fungus that they end up dying because they're meant to be asleep, not waking up. And so they run out of their fat reserves before the winter is over. And most of them end up dying in the caves that they're trying to hibernate in because of this weird fungus that's been introduced to the caves. And so my research found that the bats that survive this disease tend to have different versions of some genes compared to the bats that die from them. So the bats that survive this invasive white nose fungus tend to be a little bit fatter, it looks like, than the bats that die from the disease. They're genetically predisposed to be a little bit fatter. So humans are changing the environment. We're selecting for fatter bats. And there's also other examples where in I think it's a marine species of snail where it lives in areas that are sort of have a lot of water pollution. So we're selecting in some cases for snails that can live in more polluted waters. So we're just like with artificial selection and how, we've changed those animals over time. We're even changing wildlife over time with our actions. And I think that's going to be a really interesting topic to explore too.
Well, Georgia, we will have to devote at least 1 to 2 topics on bats because I'm absolutely fascinated. I know nothing about bats, and what you're telling me is incredibly interesting. So just those of you who don't know, Georgia's background, as you probably found out by now, is about bats. It's absolutely fascinating. So.
Yeah. And we have some cool comments too.
Yes.
So we have questions about lead bullets. So lead bullets, it's bad because like the lead can get into the environment and into the animals, or an animal can eat a lead bullet, if they're eating something that got killed by a bullet. So we have a question, is the ban on lead bullets still in place? I don't know. And I would imagine the answer depends on where you are. Definitely something that
California is the first state that has a ban on it. It's quite remarkable, actually. So I think we will definitely take up that topic. I think, gosh, there's so much clever people here. I'm just reading through the comments.
We have questions about microplastics.
Yeah, a big topic. That was a big topic in Vancouver on the Big Bird conference. I will try and bring up something on that. So it's a huge topic, absolutely. So good point. Let's see. I think that was Amanda. Hi, Amanda. By the way, very nice to see you here.
Yeah.
So let's see who else there is. Yeah, the monarch butterfly. I've read about that, Amanda. Again, the verge of extinction. Yes, beautiful monarch butterfly. So yes, I think we can definitely take that topic up. Great.
Yeah, another comment from Amanda about BPA's, right? This chemical in plastics that gets into the environment. And there's true, like chemicals getting into the environment from humans is like a whole, that could be a whole, definitely, there's a lot of stuff there. A lot of medicines and also, hormones like from birth control, for example, get into the water. And I know that that has a big effect on amphibians, for example. They're very sensitive to chemicals in the water. So you've opened my mind to a whole another category that I hadn't thought to put on the list yet.
Excellent. I can tell you we're going to be busy for a few years, the way I see things
Yeah.
here. So that's all good. It's good because it challenges us too, and that's exactly what we need. So this is all very interesting. Oh, someone says California is still using lead bullets. I had the impression. I was of the impression that they did ban it, but let me check up on this. We'll take that topic up. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll look into it. And it could also be something like where they passed the law to ban
Mhm.
lead bullets, but it, takes effect in 3 years or something, give everyone a chance to use up all their lead bullets or something like that. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, I don't know for sure. We'll look into it. Yeah. Um,
Okay, Georgia. Next topic. Where are we?
I think we're in human wildlife diseases.
Okay.
So, I talked a little bit just in the bat example, the kind of humans bringing a disease to wildlife. Obviously, that's not the direction people normally think of it as going, especially when it comes to bats. And especially with the coronavirus, we think of, oh, wildlife giving us diseases. But often that disease exchange depends a lot on what's happening in the area with sort of best practices for protecting species and maintaining that distinction. So like when we start cutting down a lot of habitat, for example, and disturbing habitat, that can create situations where bats, for example, are coming into people's houses more and stuff like that. So it's not necessarily a situation where humans and wildlife are in conflict. There's certainly cases where we can help wildlife and ourselves not get diseases by sort of taking the right precautions and protective measures. So definitely a lot there. Um,
Good.
and then the next topic I have, eating insects. Well, maybe just eating wildlife in general would be a better one. We mentioned
I
hunting
think so.
already. Am I hunting if I go out and like find a grasshopper and eat it? I don't know.
I think this is a topic for Isa. I mean, I have no idea about this, but I'm sure you can add something on it. Very interesting. But I would agree, eating wildlife is maybe the broader topic here. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and Isa Betancourt, you should definitely follow her. She does a
Yes.
lot. She does a weekly bug scope on humans, or not on humans and insects, just on insects. But yeah, if you're interested in insects, give her a follow. I also have a lab mate, someone else in my PhD lab, Ricardo, who he studies grasshoppers and he's from Mexico, and he was telling me about how there's this one species, I guess maybe it's a locust or a grasshopper, but it's very common to eat it in southern parts of Mexico, and they're served up fried and stuff like that. But in the north, the same species is considered a plague and is sort of associated with starvation, right? Because it comes and it eats all the crops, and people in a lot of those areas, so I'm told, don't really like to eat it, the grasshopper or the locust, because it's like gross to eat insects. And so he has a very funny line in his presentations. How can the same species be both food and play and famine? It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, a lot of different cultural things to explore when it comes to our acceptance of eating insects. Yeah.
Yeah, David Howell just says, Isa is doing an insect eating video at the moment. Not sure when she'll publish it. So good
Yeah,
to know.
it's very soon. It's coming out. It's on eating the cicadas. So here in North America, we just had a Cicada Emergency. They've only come out every 17 years, and she has a very cool video. I've seen Issa, for those who don't know, is also my roommate. I've seen the video. I saw a lot of the filming. I'm vegetarian, so I didn't eat any of the cicadas, but I did eat a empty shell of a cicada that she made into a little cannoli. No cicadas were killed in that because the cicada had, shed its exoskeleton and left it behind. But I'm super excited for that video to come out.
That's funny.
It's going to be really cool.
Great. Let's leave the topic of eating insect. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is an interesting. I added this. What does conservation really mean? Now, this is why I put this topic up, because it's actually not that easy. All these topics are really complex. What are we really conserving here? Is it our own interests? Is it the regional interest? Is it the world? What do we really mean by conservation? And you'll also find that there are a lot of conflicts between conservation and animal activists. Animal activists would typically defend a certain type of species and be quite clear about that, which may be in conflict with conservation. So this is something to find the balance here in our ecosystem and so on is something I think, Georgia, that is worth bringing up. Okay.
Yeah, I'm so excited about that topic because my bachelor's degree, my initial education was actually not to be a scientist, it was to be someone who works in environment and policy. And so, we learned about a lot of these things, and that used to be a big part of how I saw the world. And now I'm just like, I'm curious what's happening with these bats. I'm going to go find out. But that's such an important topic. And, I think a lot of us want to protect the environment and protect wildlife, but how to do it is just not so clear of a question, not so clear, as you said.
Amanda says, I'd love to hear more of that, Georgia. Looking forward to it. So that's good.
Yay, I'm great. That's great. Thanks, Amanda. I'm great. No.
Okay, next topic. Yeah, that's one of that lies very much on my heart is as an astronomer is wildlife and light. I mean, the impact that light has and light pollution. We've changed the whole night in today very much. How does that affect the migration of birds, the behavior of nocturnal animals, and so on and so on? It's a huge topic that many people are not aware of. And there are very simple things that we can do to actually reduce light at night. It's just that we've become so accustomed to flood everything, unfortunately. So I think that's worth a big topic. Yeah. And that brings us right to the next one, wildlife and sound, which is really fascinating. I had the pleasure of talking to an absolute expert called Bernie Krause is his name. He's in California. And I actually have a recording of an interview that I did with him about 1.5 years ago, which is absolutely fascinating because this man went around the world recording sounds of orcas, of whales, of eagles, and so on, and the most beautiful, loons and whatever. It's just incredible. I have that recording. It's absolutely it'll make you shiver. It's so beautiful. And he actually has done sound recordings in California. I don't remember exactly where it was, but in a forest. And he has shown how these sounds actually change as the urbanization changes and so on, and how the species change just by listening to sounds. And that's something I would like to bring up because it's something we don't think of very often.
Yeah, and I mean, that's such an important topic. Again, like we just had the 4th of July here in the United States, tons of fireworks going off at night. I mean, that's just one night a year, but there's noise pollution that happens every day. That's extremely harmful, more so than we realize, particularly to some animals.
And you'll know the effect on orcas, of course, right? And whales and so on that communicate that way.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be talked about. And again, I know a Norwegian orca expert, so I can bring her in also on this topic. So it's good.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Let's see, your next topic you have.
Oh, this is my favorite, of course, because I'm quite a techie.
Yeah.
Wildlife and technical innovation is absolutely fascinating. As you know, I love studying birds in flight, studying them in slow motion. I love light because my own background is actually in optics. So I love light scattering, diffraction, and all the incredible intrinsic details that that the iridescence that you have typically in wildlife, in peacocks, in all kinds of fish and so on, is fascinating. And it's amazing what nature has come up with, the inventions that we're copying. It also has to do with new innovations that we have for clothing and so on. It's a huge topic, and it's very interesting because we're learning so much from wildlife.
Yeah, I think that that's going to be another really cool topic to check out. And I just want to highlight the comments real quick. We have so many comments.
Yeah, go and read them. Go through, Gary. Please go through them.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all of them. I'm just going to highlight, well, yeah, there's one about June bugs being the croutons of the sky for bats. I appreciate that. But yeah, Mohammed had a really good comment about the proposed topic, the myth of trophy hunting as a conservation tool. And that's actually something we talked about in my sort of pilot episode interview with Molly Tumulovich with the Humane Society. And this is maybe a good moment to just briefly mention the platform that we're broadcasting from HAPS. And that's going to be a good way to find all the episodes. So if you go to my HAPS account, it's like HAPPS is the name of the app, and you can sign up and you can follow both Christian and myself on there. It should be pretty easy to find us. And on that we can have you can see my interview with Molly, but also maybe we can throw the link to the interview with Molly like in a comment on the Facebook posts and stuff like that, and in the YouTube description. That way people can find it and see what we're referencing. But yeah, she talked about the myth of trophy hunting and how it doesn't bring in as much money for conservation as people often talked about or often say. And that's definitely something where we can get some more experts to come and talk about that too, because we just kind of touched on it a little bit, but it was something that I didn't actually know that much about, and I was excited to learn about.
Wonderful, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another comment from David, conservationists can often be rather conservative, which may not always be right in dynamic evolving systems. Yeah, so yeah, that sounds like it'll be a good topic that will fall into, how do we go about doing conservation and practicing it and prioritizing things. And David also mentioned that he saw something interesting on how light pollution impacts moths. So
yes, of course.
That would be
absolutely.
Yeah, another good thing to look into. And thank you so much, Janice, for the Night Owl Award.
Mm-hmm.
And a comment from Molly B about the starlings around her house that imitate other birds, and one cries like a baby. Yeah, starlings are an example of an invasive species in North America, at least, maybe other places too, that I love them. They're beautiful birds. They sound beautiful, but they're a big problem in terms of an invasive bird species. And let's see. Yeah, more comments about trophy hunting being bad. So I'm glad that it seems like there's a lot of shared interests in the audience.
Definitely, definitely. Okay, well, goodness me, I'm glad we're storing all this. I have to look at the replay to put up all the extra topics. I can tell you, we're going to fill a book like War and Peace here. It's going to be incredible.
Yeah. Okay. So we just have a couple more of our topics that we'd come up with.
Yeah, of course, photography is very much at my heart, or filming and so on. Mind the gap. This is often a very interesting topic. How close do you get to get the good shot, and what can you do, what can you not, what are intrusive and non-intrusive methods? And this is debated all the time. It goes all the way up to David Attenborough, right? I've seen a lot of debates. Are they going too far to show us this, and so on? So I think, I think this is really worth an hour of discussion too. And then finally, a very interesting one, yes, wildlife and drones. I mean, as technology advances, we get a lot of, possibilities to study wildlife in all kinds of ways. And I actually know Professor David Bird, who used to be he's a retired professor from McGill University in Eastern Canada. in Montreal. And he's an expert on this. And I think I can get him to talk about drones, how to safely use drones, what we learn from them, and how we can get to areas that we usually couldn't get to. Yeah, and I think that's the end of our list for now.
Yeah, it is. And wow, what a list it is, especially when you consider that each of those topics, has so much under it that we can talk about, so many sub lists on our list. And yeah, I think it's going to be really
Wow.
fun doing this show. And oh, is it true solar panels are killing birds? Starduzti asks. I'm not sure about solar panels killing birds, but they definitely are a big problem for some other animals I know, like in the desert where they basically are shading huge areas of the desert. I know it creates problems for a lot of like reptiles, like desert tortoises and other things that they're adapted and they're used to this bright, sunny, hot habitat. And so it becomes a problem when you get rid of that. Personally, I'm a big fan of, trying to put solar panels on houses and stuff. That way we're not like going out and disturbing otherwise undisturbed habitat. So, when we talk about, problems with solar panels or something, I think, it's good to make the distinction. It doesn't mean solar panels all the time are a problem. There's a lot of questions about how you do the implementation and
Yeah,
stuff.
I actually used to design renewables, solar and wind. That was part of my profession as an electrical engineer, and of course we looked at wildlife too. I saw a comment here about windmills and wildlife, and that is, of course, that's a very well-known topic. Especially, you should never put windmills into the migratory patterns of birds. That is something that has got a lot of attention. As far as solar energy is concerned, especially solar electric, there's solar thermal, solar electric. You have different ways of converting energy. I completely agree with Georgia. I probably think that solar energy is the most friendly way to go, especially, and I'm going to go off on a tangent for just 1 minute, as we change from the from the combustion engine to the electric car. We will need an infrastructure also in the house where we can charge our cars, and especially in warm areas where we have lots of sun, you can actually utilize or harness the energy that you get from your house and recharge your car that way too, and feed it back into the grid. So I think this is definitely a way to go, especially for large countries as China and so on. And I think in Canada, they are thinking very much of becoming pure electric very soon. Doesn't mean that all combustion engines will be gone, but it'll be a big change, because the change in legislation will probably mean that in a few years you cannot buy any new combustion engines anymore. So the whole infrastructure goes with that, and of course, as you correctly say, also the environment goes with that. We have to see how does that integrate with wildlife. There are many downsides of solar energy. I know I'm going to get someone who says, well, what about the production costs and so on? I get it. I never said everything is fine. I do understand that. However, as far as wildlife is concerned, I would think that fortunately the impact is rather small.
Wow, and we have a comment here. In the desert, I'm assuming it means the solar panels look like lakes, and the birds get too close, they do catch fire. So that's Christine that made that comment, and I just looked it up, and I didn't have time to watch the video, but it looks like there's a video or something of it. I could see it. I'll have to look into that more to verify it, but like if that does happen, I'm sure it probably doesn't happen that commonly. Maybe, I don't know, but maybe it does. We'll have to.
Christine, I'm not sure what, I will look it up, because usually the surface reflectance of solar panels shouldn't be that great. There are different types of solar energy. When you talk about harnessing solar energy in the desert, this is solar thermal, and that is very well known. So what they have there is they have parabolic dishes that concentrates the light either in as a parabolic, as a cylinder, or they have curved mirrors that focuses the light onto a tower in order to heat something, in order to generate electricity. And yes, absolutely true that has been effect. That is in Barstow, California, for example. That's those are one of the areas. But as far as solar panels as such, as for photovoltaics are concerned, maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't heard that yet.
No, but Christian, this is exactly where I think it shows that we make a good team, because I consider myself as like reasonably educated about renewable energy and stuff, but I had no idea that there was this distinction between like solar panels and solar like parabolic energy collection. So I think, yeah, to a lot of people, those things are like maybe not distinct from each other. And so I just learned something really interesting and new from you, and hopefully so have people in our audience.
Well,
Um,
and vice versa. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, Christine. It's what the biologists were saying. Yeah, me as yeah, I'd be like, oh, those birds are getting killed by solar panels, and to me, there's not really a distinction between a solar panel versus a solar parabolic thermal. What did you call it again?
Yeah, that's the one that just pure mirrors, Georgia. They're
Okay.
just mirrors that focus the light. You've seen this in the science fiction films. They love doing that, right? They focus them onto a tower, and they heat something up like it would be a steam turbine, gas turbine, or something like that, and they produce electricity that way. Because the higher you go with temperature, the better your efficiency is. That's the idea. The photovoltaics, as the word says, photovoltaic is the conversion of light directly to electricity, and that is done by converting photons directly to electrons through a semiconductor. So it's a completely different process.
Yeah, completely different types of solar
Yeah.
energy collection to you, but we
Yes,
can
that's
talk
it.
about them both on this show
Sure.
and their
Sure.
respective effects on wildlife. Amanda says the croutons of the sky. I love it. Yeah, someone mentioned earlier that about June bugs being the croutons of the sky for bats, and now I guess presumably these sadly roasted birds are the croutons of the sky in another context. Um, so yeah, I think that about wraps it up. So the show, as I understand it, Christian, we're going to try to do this every Wednesday at this time, right?
Yes, we can do that. That's fine. Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
so every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and I don't
1
know,
p.m.
whatever,
Pacific. Yeah.
1 p.m. Pacific. And then I mean, we have a lot of people, it sounds like, tuning in from wherever, or a lot of different places. So wherever you are, come in at this same time next week to find us. And yeah, we're casting this a bunch of different places. It's on Christian's YouTube and both of our HAPS accounts. And it's going to my Facebook and your Facebook, I believe.
Yes,
So
definitely. Definitely. We'll make sure it goes all the ways. Yes, of course.
yeah. So
Mhm.
please, find us on those platforms and follow both of us. And we look forward to hearing from both of you and from bringing in different people to interview. And just as a heads up, Christian and I think the first couple episodes will probably be us, sort of interviewing each other because we've both, worked a lot in these areas. I've also actually worked on wind energy a little bit as well. So
Excellent. Oh,
yeah,
I look forward to that. It's going to be
yeah, I
fun.
should plug that in addition to a lot of birds dying at wind turbines, a lot of bats actually die as well at wind turbines. So that's what I was working on. But anyways, yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Any last words, Christian?
Well, absolutely. I'm really excited to do this together with Georgia. I think the topics are incredible. Thank you to Georgia for coming up with the initiative. I really appreciate it, and most of all, I appreciate our wonderful audience. And I look forward to co-hosting this with Georgia. I think we're going to have a great time. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for coming too. Okay.